Welcome to AgencyRise, the podcast where digital agencies rise together. I'm your host, Chris Rudolph. I've spent the last decade coaching digital agency founders, helping them scale, systemize operations, and break free from the day-to-day grind. On this podcast, we talk about what really moves the needle for agencies, getting clients, building a team, creating systems, positioning, focus, and freedom. So no hype here, no guru nonsense, just real conversations from the agency trenches. So today I'm joined by Jessie Healy, an e-commerce growth strategist, two-time agency founder, and the host of the E-commerce Impact podcast. She spent 15 years at the sharp edge of digital advertising, including leading performance marketing internationally for Etsy. Then she got laid off while 7 months pregnant and started freelancing out of the back of a cafe. That turned into Webtopia, a UK e-commerce agency she scaled to 7 figures and exited in 2023. Since that, she's launched Ecom Growth Collective, which serves 7 and 8 figure D2C brands, and Ecom Rockets, an accelerator for D2C founders. So, Jessie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
For those of who might be listening that aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit more about you and your story.
Yeah, sure. So I think I spent the early part of my career really as a digital marketer in lots of different roles. I think I jumped around quite a lot. I was living in London at the time, so there was lots of opportunity there, lots of jobs, lots of exciting opportunities always around the corner. So I kind of jumped from job to job, but I never really was satisfied with being an employee, and it kind of never used to work out for me. I always say I never once got promoted until I promoted myself. Partly, I think, because I never stuck around long enough, but I think also it was just something that wasn't quite a right fit about working for other people. So eventually I got the push I needed to start my own thing when I was 7 months pregnant and got laid off. So this was the role just after Etsy, where a job I'd taken after leaving Etsy, where it was supposedly a unicorn company, and it was like doing really well, and then it crashed and burned, and the whole thing in quite dramatic fashion fell apart. And so I was forced to become an agency owner. I was forced to find money and work because I was the main breadwinner in my family, and I was 7 months pregnant with my first child. And so, I started freelancing and found the work came really quickly and easily. I got a really big client running Facebook ads for an education product, got some really good case studies early on, and really dove into Facebook ads. And I'd been doing Google ads for 20 years, so that was pretty easy, but really dove deep into Facebook ads at a time, this was sort of 2017, 2018, at a time when that was really taking off, and there wasn't many people with, I guess I had a lot of strategic expertise from my marketing career, and then I had the hands-on experience as well. And so before I knew it, I had an agency kind of by accident. And then 2020 hit, pandemic hit, and that was an amazing time to be in e-commerce, honestly. Like, obviously not amazing for the world, but great for a new agency that was getting good results for e-commerce clients. I got some really good advice early on from an early mentor called Kat Howell to niche down. So we niched down pretty early into e-commerce, and I think that really helped give us a lot of tailwind. And yes, pandemic hit. And so I just decided, here I am. So my partner wasn't working because of the pandemic. So he looked after our son, who was two at this point.
Oh, wow.
And he looked after him in the house. I set up a desk in the corner of our bedroom, and I got to work and scaled the agency. And by the end of 2021, we had hit seven figures, or a 7-figure run rate in the agency. And at the kind of peak, it hit 20 people, a 20 people team. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I love where you had some adversity, and, in adversity, we get resourceful, and just, just to see the arc of your journey. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely that push to be brave and start something, was because I couldn't go and get another job. I was 7 months pregnant. I had some money saved from an earlier redundancy. So I got made redundant twice in a year. And so that was part of it, right? I was like, wow, you know what? It's not that stable to be employed. So might as well employ myself. So that's kind of where it all came from. And then I guess the next part of the story is, once I'd scaled that agency, in typical Jessie fashion, I decided I'm going to move my family to New Zealand, even though the agency was based on clients in Europe and the UK, which is a very big time difference. and a very long distance in actual terms, 24 hours of flight, 12 hours of time difference. It's not that I didn't think it through, but I just have this eternal optimist in me. But it turned out it was very hard to run that, even though the agency was fully remote, it was very hard to run it from such a different time zone. So we can talk a lot about, the challenges I had there. So I made the decision to sell it in 2023. And so I sold to another agency, they merged it, and took a couple of years off agency, and then recently have launched a new agency. So that in a nutshell is the full story, how I ended up a 2-time agency founder, single exit, and here we are.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what have been some keys to the growth of your various, agencies and ventures?
That's a good question. So, I think first and foremost, like doing really good work and like really caring about the work. And by specializing, we were able to really drill down into like being a repeatable productized service. So in 2017, 18, when I was launching that first agency, that was kind of quite easy to create a repeatable service for Meta. And we can talk about how things have changed now in terms of running Meta ads for clients. But it was very much like media buying plus creative strategy. We didn't do any creative execution. We had quite a standardized service that clients wanted, and we could repeat that. And so I could like step myself away from that quite quickly. I read books like Clockwork and E-Myth quite early on. I studied with a few mentors that talked about how to kind of like systematize your work, delegate to team members, and then so that then allows you to kind of focus on where the agency needs you most, which in this case was, scaling, growing sales, getting myself out there. So in the pandemic, I did lots of online networking. I got really into LinkedIn during the pandemic. I'd seen like a post by Gary Vee saying like, don't sleep on LinkedIn. And I was like, wow, that guy's, he talks a bit of sense sometimes. So kind of on a whim, I decided to focus on LinkedIn. Because I had a big network already in the digital marketing space, there was like a foundation to build on. And so it took off quite quickly. And so taking things off my plate so I can focus on the growth, so I can focus on the marketing of the agency and build systems around lead generation and pitching and closing and the sales process, I guess would be probably the main thing. I think the other thing is like we were good at winning clients and we were good at retaining them, especially in those early days of the agency, because I had a really good understanding of like I had a lot of experience that I could bring to our clients. I had a lot of like very senior expertise from having run brands in-house from my digital marketing career. And I think that appealed to people. My first agency, our initial tagline was the anti-agency agency. So I had a lot of like,
interesting.
From the other side, I'd had a lot of bad experiences with agencies as a client. So I built an agency that in my view kind of solved those issues. So we were very much like, we're not going to make you have to chase us for things or do the thinking for us, which is what I always felt I had to do as a client. We are going to take responsibility for the growth of your brand, and we're going to tell you what you need, and we're going to be the ones leaning forward to solve your problems rather than waiting to react to your prompting. So that was kind of like the underlying ethos was, putting their growth first, even before our own, and building that into everything we did in terms of the service. And I think even my new agency today, although the service looks really different from what it looked like in 2018, 19, that kind of ethos of like, your goals are our goals, I think runs through everything I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because your experience on almost the other side of the table and interacting with agencies, like how that really shaped, how you approach it.
Yeah.
The founders that I work with and talk with, so much even the sales process and that ongoing relationship is dealing with like almost the trauma of what the brands their experience with other agencies that went bad. So that I love that you had that type of experience and from the start, and you can build that into the foundation of your.
And my stint between selling the previous agency and launching this new agency, I actually worked in-house. Like I did a fractional role for about a year, literally in building, like in-house for an ecom, like an 8-figure ecom brand based here in New Zealand. And so again, I got to go inside again and like see what it's like in 2025 to like build a brand from the inside and I actually hired 2 agencies while I was there. Both had to be fired. Like it was like With all my experience of agencies and my huge network of great agencies and the due diligence I put into hiring the agencies, they both failed abysmally. And so we ended up building an in-house team for that brand, ironically.
Interesting. Yeah, I would love to hear like what have been some of your toughest lessons that you've learned, along the way.
Oof. I think one of the biggest lessons I'm bringing to my new agency now is like boundaries, client selection, and those two things are interwoven, but like really getting clear with yourself, what you want your life to be and what you're willing to accept and what you won't accept, and not like letting things creep in. I sold my first agency because of the time zone challenges. Like I had to work every night basically. So with my new agency, we are being super strict about how many clients we would take on outside that time zone. And like in terms of hiring people, we're making sure we hire for the time zone that we're in so that we can run a calm, happy set up and not be the ones, because it's always the agency owner that ends up being the one bending backwards because they feel bad for their team or whatever. So we're not the ones bending backwards to accommodate like different time zones of client or team. So those kind of boundaries are super important. And then I think client selection or client filtering, like this lesson has been so hard for me to learn because I'm an optimist, I'm an empath, and I want to help people. And so I'll meet a founder and I'll see that I can solve their problems and I'll feel sorry for them and I'll overlook maybe red flags and I'll just hope for the best. And now, like after like experiencing it over and over and over, not listening to that little voice in my gut or that like checkbox on our own form that says we will not take it for granted, I think I've really learned it. Like now we are the new agency we're building, we have a very small book of business. We only take on one client a month. We are brutal in the selection process. And there's just not, in my view, there's just no point taking on anyone that's not a fit because it's only going to it's not fair. It's not even fair on them, but it's not fair on the other clients. It's not fair on the team. It's not fair on us, the founders, because it's gonna cost us in the long run. So yeah, that would be the big one.
Yeah, I really liked how you brought that up. I know it's probably not, those aren't the fun lessons that you learn along the way, but I actually find that so common. I don't know if it's a personality type thing for agency founders, and that's why I love this industry is that generally most founders really care and they really want to solve problems and they're optimistic and they have that figure it out attitude. But I think you kind of brought up like that can go into unhealth or to the like kind of the extreme a little bit. And I love how you're putting in those safeguards and those processes to keep from going in the other direction.
Yeah. I think like as well, a kind of sub lesson to that is like if your pipeline is dry, then you will kind of you can slip into a scarcity mindset and then you can take on the wrong clients. And then you've got no time to build your pipeline because you're like running around like a headless chicken trying to serve this bad fit client. So pipeline has to kind of come first so that you've always got, sales calls booked, you're turning people away, you've got a wait list. If you've got that, then you can make much clearer, better decisions about who you let in to the agency. So yeah, that's kind of another part of it.
Yeah, that's really good insight. And because I think of like when things get stressful, what's the first thing that gets pushed aside by the founder, like the pipeline, the sales, the marketing, things like that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing in ads and e-commerce right now?
So I think I won't so much say trends, but I'll say like the common challenges I see that are kind of new and different from before. So we're seeing like the e-commerce industry is so much more mature than it was even 5-6 years ago with my last agency. So we are seeing like the landscape is changing a lot in terms of like what is required to succeed and some of the problems that are coming up for people. So I guess one kind of like micro challenge that I see a lot of brands facing is like declining reach in terms of their ads. So often with brands that have been around for a while, they kind of rely on the same style of creative or this, they're talking to the same persona. And the way that the algorithm has changed on Meta in the last few years is not rewarding that behavior at all. And they'll see it will look like, stagnated growth, stagnated ROAS. But when you look under the hood, you'll realize that it's a reach problem. The ads aren't reaching new people. And the solution to that is like creative diversity and diverse persona targeting in terms of like the kind of media buying. So I guess then that leads to like the other trend or challenge, which is it's kind of a trend and a challenge, which is just like the need for creative kind of volume and quality just keeps getting higher every year. So when I started my first agency, we were kind of innovative in the space in that we provided creative strategy for clients. We called it creative strategy. It wasn't very strategic when I look back, but compared to what other agencies were doing, it was a step ahead. So we would look at each brand, we would look at competitors, we would provide them with like really clear suggestions as to creative we wanted to test, and it would be based on kind of marketing angles or insights about the brand. But it wasn't like based on like a lot of detailed market research or, review mining. We didn't have AI to help us with that kind of thing. But, there was something there. Whereas now what most good agencies are providing is like very intensive creative strategy. And then in my new agency, we also then take that strategy and we actually make the ads for people. So where we found like time and again in my previous agency, we'd make all these suggestions to brands and like the good ones would execute. The ones that are like busy and run off their feet or whatever would never get around to executing the creative suggestions, and we wouldn't be able to get the results. So piece of advice someone gave me, I think it was Tim Keen, is like, look for the problems your clients can't solve and just solve them for them rather than waiting around asking them to fix this thing. So in my new agency, we're basically kind of taking all of those growth problems off our clients' plate because we know we can, in most cases, we can do it better because we do it all day long. So yes, they could make their own creative. Yes, they could hire a freelance designer, etc. But we do it all day long. We look at ads all day long. It's kind of what we're obsessed with. So we can churn out the ads at a much, higher quality and much more kind of quickly and reactively than the client can. So now we just do that for them, and that's part of our service. So yeah, so that's a little bit of a tangent, I guess, from how the algorithms change, how that looks in the data, and then like how that then plays out in terms of the service and what we're doing for clients. What else would I say in terms of trends? I think the other challenge or trend is attribution has become increasing. It feels like it's just become a lot more difficult. I think with 2021's like iOS 14 update and like losing a lot of tracking in platform, we then kind of moved to a world where a lot of brands started using attribution tools. In my view, they don't necessarily solve the problem that they say they will, because they still give you a view on the data that may or may not be correct in terms of why the customer actually bought. And so, yeah, so I think I see this a lot with brands that, maybe they're just not super sophisticated yet in terms of understanding all of this. So they'll still look at like Google Analytics data to like try and see which channels are driving performance, or they'll be looking at in-platform data rather than looking at like a blended view or like optimizing based on like the true revenue in their Shopify store. So agencies like mine that can help people navigate like the complexity of their data and make it simple for them to understand how the actions they're taking in ad account or with creative or on their website are actually translating into like profit growth. That's where we kind of help our clients. And that I think that sets us apart compared to agencies that don't kind of take like a holistic view of the data.
Well, I'm really curious. So you grew an agency, you successfully sold it, and so many of the founders out there have that aspiration. And a lot of times their aspiration is that becomes like a vehicle to like kind of fund and move them into their next venture, whether it's to start their own brands, become a minority investor in other brands, or do even other things like real estate or investments or things like that. But you exited and then you jumped in and started another agency. Tell me a little bit about that.
I sold my agency in 2023, and then I was like, I'm never going back to agency. I'm going to run this. So I already had a group coaching program where I teach early stage ecom brands how to run ads themselves without an agency. And I was going to kind of scale that and then do sort of consulting on the side. And then I took a fractional role inside an ecom brand, and that was fun for a year. But I think what happened was, so yes, I do have a real estate portfolio. So I am kind of relatively financially secure from the sale. So like there's no like pressing need to like make a ton of money, which is nice. So now it's kind of like, well, where are my skills and experience best used? What kind of just feels like the right fit? And I think it was two things. One was like people just kept asking me to run their ads at a certain point when you've done lead generation your whole business life and there's all these leads coming at you that you're just turning away. It kind of feels weird. So that was one part. And I guess it spoke to the fact that, after working in-house for that brand, I could really see that there's still a need. Like there's still a need for good agencies. Where I have moved to in New Zealand, kind of in Australasia, there's very much a need for good agencies in the ecom space. Ecom's kind of like only really getting started here. And the agencies that are here just aren't, like they are just not up with the play at all. So there's a huge opportunity to do it well for brands. So I kind of saw a space in the market. I could see where, where we could differentiate ourselves. And then the other part was I met my co-founder who I had been working with for a couple of years in my coaching program. And he, like the way we work as an agency, he's like head of operations and delivery. I'm head of like marketing and sales for the agency. So it means that building an agency is very different from last time when I did it on my own. Like in theory, things happen, but once we win a client, he can take care of it and, make sure they have a great experience and get great results. And I'm not being pulled away from like promoting the agency or like, I kind of run the finance and the HR and the hiring and all of that. And I'm not like having to wear like a million different hats from the get-go. And I'm not having to necessarily keep us up with the play with media buying, although I seem to kind of just keep up with it through him and everything, podcasts and like seeing what's going on with our clients. But I don't have to like proactively go after that because he's taking care of that. So it feels much more of a calm way to build an agency than the first time round.
Yeah.
I think as well, like when you've learned so many lessons and like figured out how to make an agency profitable and scale and like how to hire and all those things, it just felt like if I went into a different type of business, like I would throw away all that experience that I had built. And I still feel like I've got probably 15, 20 years of career left in front of me. So it felt too soon to do that.
That's great. That's great. Well, we're going to jump into our rapid fire round. So I'm going to fire off a question to you and you can fire back the first answer that comes to you. So what are some of the most helpful software tools that you use in your business?
Well, Claude, obviously, I'm just looking. One I use all the time. I don't know if I'm like old school or what. It's called Text Expander. It just has all these like snippets I've created. So when I'm typing, it can like just insert sentences into my emails that I use all the time. I use it a lot for like how to add us as a partner, a follow up to a first sales call, that kind of thing. And I'm just looking down here. Claude plugged into things like PowerPoint has been amazing. Granola is my note taker that I love. And I'm playing around with Whisperflow where you talk instead of type.
Yeah, that's great. Well, what's one book or mentor who has helped you along the way?
Book-wise, I would say in the early stage of the agency, like books like Clockwork, Profit First. It's Mike McCallowitz's like series that I think is really good.
I agree.
And person-wise, a guy called Mike Cosio coached me a lot in the early stages of my agency and really helped me to kind of like just emotionally and system and kind of in terms of systems and business strategy. He helped me a lot on both fronts. Yeah.
And what daily habit or routine do you swear by? And it could be business or personal.
Exercise every day. Like move your body in some way, even if it's like taking your kid to the park or going for a swim with them or jumping on the trampoline. Just like make sure you get body movement in every single day.
Excellent. And what's one piece of advice that you give all the founders out there who are listening to this?
For agency founders, I would say niche down and systematize and delegate as soon as possible.
I love that. And if our audience wants to learn more about you and your business, where's the best place to find you online?
I think I'm most active on LinkedIn, building up a little bit of a following in Twitter. But yeah, LinkedIn is where I show up most days.
Awesome. Well, Jessie, this is amazing. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. And for everyone tuning in from the gym, in your car, or at your desk, thank you. And if this episode was helpful for you, be sure to subscribe and share it with another agency founder who needs to hear it. Because agencies don't rise alone, they rise together. This is AgencyRise.